Hey everybody, welcome to Right On, the podcast from Final Draft. This is the show where we talk about all things screenwriting. I'm your host, Phil Galasso. Today on the pod, we have Coach Beard himself, Brendan Hunt, co-star and more relevant to this discussion, co-creator of Ted Lasso.
Howdy, y'all.
Ted! What do you say to a cocktail, Coach Lasso?
Oh, the same thing I'd say to Diane Sawyer if she ever asked me out on a date. Yes, please.
Live from the dog track, it's Richmond with 8 straight ties.
How many more matches before you hit the panic button?
There's 2 buttons I never like hitting. That's panic and snooze. I don't care what our record is. It's all about believing that everything's going to work out in the end, exactly as it's supposed to. And isn't the idea of never give up one of them things we always talk about in sports? And shouldn't that apply to people, too?
It's a beautiful metaphor for many of life's journeys.
The team's just a little unlucky, that's all.
Maybe we should bring in a sports psychologist.
Brought you a little something for your first day of work here.
I don't eat sugar.
Really? I've never met someone that doesn't eat sugar. Only heard about them. They all live in this godless place called Santa Monica.
Sing it! We will rock you.
You got a fever for the flavored little girl talk, don't you?
This chap I've been seeing, John.
Stamos?
No, his name's John Wingsnight.
Like at a sports bar? Like Monday night's wings night down at PJ Flats?
Would you please stop?
Rule number 1, even though it's called girl talk, sometimes it needs to be more like, girl, listen.
We will rock you.
What's Ted doing?
Probably homesick. Closest thing he can find to a Dodge Ram.
Back home, if a team was playing poorly, we don't call them unlucky. What do we call them, Coach?
New York Jets.
Brendan and I discussed how the show evolved from a set of commercials to a hit show, his journey from sketch comedy to TV writing, the role of writer and performer on this show, and more. Check it out. Brendan Hunt, thank you for taking the time to chat with me today, sir.
Thank you for having me.
So if somehow someone lived under a rock, how would you describe Ted Lasso to them?
Oh gosh, I realized my explanation is outdated. It's like my explanation is almost more about the commercials, but it's what I've got in the hopper. A rootin' tootin' American college football coach goes to England to coach a soccer team, even though he knows absolutely nothing about soccer.
Yeah, that about sums up. And so
accurate if it's only a fraction of what's actually going on. So fuck it.
So you you mentioned the ads, so that sort of leads to my next question, which is the show actually started out as a sort of series of ads that you and Jason Sudeikis did back in the day, and then years later it kind of came back as this show. Can you talk a little bit about that journey, because that's not the typical journey of a TV show?
Sure. Yeah. It was me and Jason and Joe Kelly, the other creators. And yeah, Jason got asked to do this promo for the NBC Sports' new coverage of the English Premier League, which is a soccer league. And and we were all soccer fans to varying degrees. It seemed like fun. And we get to go to England for like 3 whole days. So like, yeah, sure. We'll do a commercial. And it went well enough. They had us come back and do it again the following season. And by that time, Joe and Jason and I were like, well, this is actually pretty fun. We got to see if we can find a way to keep doing this. Yeah, we got together at Jason's and we mapped out a season, kind of an, UK style season, 6 episodes. And then like a less specific arc for another season. And then maybe a special after that. We were, looking at the structure of the UK Office basically at the time, which, is a show that we love very much. So we wrote a pilot. We had this season broken. And then nothing happened for a very long time. Jason and Joe were very busy. I was not. I would have been happy to get going on this. But eventually Bill Lawrence came along, and then there were 4 of us. And then things moved very, very quickly. And here we are.
You mentioned now there's 4 of you. What's that like? Because most shows are, created and run by 1, maybe 2, a group of 2 people. You guys have 4 very strong voices kind of in charge. What's the dynamic in the room between you all?
Well, yeah. So the writing staff is a total of 11. It's very, very different dynamics from season 1 to season 2, because season 2 we were all writing over Zoom, which is very strange. But like both Bill and Jason are kind of the de facto leaders of the room, basically. But everyone, not just Joe and I, complete license to speak up about anything, things that they want to do or things that are bumping them, for that matter. And, in particular, Jason and Joe and I come from an improv background and a sketch background. And that's a very, share the ball way of doing things. Like we we want to hear everyone's ideas, and people shouldn't be worried if they're bad ideas. As the saying goes, the worst idea with the most support beats the best idea with the least support. So so it's a pretty open room. Hopefully everyone else agrees with me on that, and it's not just I think everyone's having a good time.
Another kind of unique aspect to the writers on the show is that yourself included, the writing staff includes a lot of people who are also performers on the show. I'm curious, and you mentioned coming from an improv background, sketch background. Does that bleed into the way the show is written in the room? Do you guys like get into character and improvise that way, or is there a pretty strict line between writer and performer?
It's a great question. Certainly, if we're writing dialogue or riffing on a moment or whatever, people might briefly dive into the character they're playing. But I think it's also true that any of the writers who aren't a performer might suddenly dive in to play Rebecca, or suddenly riff on Higgins, or on Beard for that matter. Everyone plays everyone in the writer's room, and I, at the very least, and I don't want to speak too much for Jason and Brett and Phoebe, who also plays Jane, but I'm personally never thinking about what my character needs, or has to get from a given scene or whatever. I think we're all, and this comes from the top down in terms of Jason and Bill. We're all focused on the whole of the project, and if a character that one of us plays is in the scene, then I think it's still everyone's default notion is to figure out how that character will help or affect that scene, rather than how that scene will help that character get to do something fun, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. So you mentioned, when I asked you about how you would describe a show, it's, guy doesn't know anything about soccer, football, goes to coach a team like that. The second season, which is airing now on Apple TV, kind of has less of that fish out of water aspect to it. And I'm curious, heading into writing season 2, was how conscious was that decision, and opening yourself up beyond that core concept? What were some of the things you guys were looking to explore now that the world and the character were sort of more established?
Well, certainly the fish out of water thing just had an organic falling off, because he's lived there for a while. And now he's, starting a soccer season for the first time. Well, we don't see that, but, imaginarily. So theoretically, he's got the hang of things a little bit more. So there's just no need to get into that. And besides which, our focus for this season was always going to be much more on internal things. We introduce a sports psychologist to the team. That's for a reason. We're going to get into people's demons more than anything else. So it was a natural move away from external concerns and toward internal concerns.
Something that I think strikes a lot of people about the show, and what makes it something that so many people love, is the tone of it. I saw someone on Twitter over the weekend say something like, it's crazy that Ted Lasso is such a success when the premise is just that, what if a man was nice? It's some science fiction premise, and I'm just curious, that Ted Lasso tone, how do you guys ride that? Because I imagine it's very easy. It would be very easy or tempting to slip over it, overly sentimental or things like that. How do you guys kind of keep yourselves on the right side of that?
Well, it's kind of easier to draw from in terms of Ted, because given the as Bill Lawrence puts it, there's been a toxicity in the discourse in our country the last 5 years particularly. We forget that it was not always thus, and there's the shows that we would have watched as kids that weren't even shows of our era so much as shows that were in reruns a lot, that just depicted a normal, seemingly normal, nice bunch of people, and a far too white and hetero America was being presented then, of course, but at least everyone was friendly. The Brady Bunch and My Three Sons and Green Acres, whatever the heck. So it's not, we're not totally creating something that never existed in the world nor in television. But then the thing that we can do that those shows didn't have, that can keep things from getting sentimental, is we get to say fuck a lot. We get to say fuck pretty much as we want. And that always cuts right through. not just because of the definition, but the very structure of the consonants. That always pulls it back. And, frankly, we're very consciously trying to play the push-pull of it. We like keeping the audience off balance. We like vacillating, not just from scene to scene, but when we can within a scene of a high comedy moment and a high emotion moment. We really, really enjoy that balancing act. And we're not doing it with the mission of trying to keep things from being too sentimental, but it sure does tick that box.
You mentioned that one of the differences for the writing staff this season was that you were writing remotely. Can you just talk a little bit about that? The challenges of it, and how you guys kind of overcame it as best as you could.
Sure. Like I for one, given my brothers, I would pick being in a writer's room together every time, not just to be able to be sitting around a table and creating that sort of beehive of creativity with everyone, but just to have, a goddamn whiteboard that you all could be looking at all times, and a joke board of note cards that just grows and grows as the room proceeds. There were some conveniences to doing it over Zoom. People could be in and out more easily if they had to go do something. People could be traveling and they could still be at work. And that's all nice, but I'd much, much rather all be together. I think we were very fortunate that we had our first season under our belt pre-lockdown, because part of why we were still able to do, hopefully a half decent job for season 2 was that we had the whole crew back plus one. So we knew each other and we had a sense of each other, and it was easier on some level, I guess, I don't know, just to at least figure out, as you say, when someone is done with their sentence or just pausing. So it was not preferable, but I think we made it work.
So one of the things that I spoke recently with Ed Solomon, and we talked about the most recent Bill and Ted movie, and how, the release of it certainly wasn't ideal, but given what everybody was going through at the time, a nice jolt of positivity, was something that the audience really responded to in a positive way. Similarly, when the first season of Ted Lasso came out, I have to imagine it was, you thought it would be under different circumstances this season as well. Does it feel nice to be putting a little bit of positivity out there when so much else is, less than ideal?
Yeah, a little bit. I'd rather we were, coming out not during a pandemic, of course, and maybe people would still like the show. We just have to imagine and pretend. But yeah, that's been one of the amazing things about the feedback from the show on socials and stuff, is just that people aren't just enjoying the show, but it has trying to think of a less pretentious sounding word than meaning, but it has meaning for people, which is great. It was not the goal. We were trying to make a good comedy, the best comedy we could, something that played to the height of its intelligence, despite a ridiculous premise. And that meant making real people and who go through real shit. So for that to have resulted unintentionally in people finding the show, helpful or inspiring, as some have said, that's just amazing, and it's really cool that it's taken a life of its own that way.
Yeah, I just want to take a kind of a step back and talk a little bit more about your journey as a writer and as a creator. When did you first know you wanted to, be involved in comedy and writing and things like that? Did it start at an early age? Did it come later in life?
I'm from Chicago. I knew I'd heard of Second City, and I knew there was a connection between Second City and Saturday Night Live. And I was already watching Saturday Night Live. I was watching Saturday Night Live by the time I was about 5. My parents weren't around much, guys. It's not that big a deal. Let's move on. But then I got taken to Second City on a school trip, and it just blew my freaking mind. Like it was incredible to me. Bonnie Hunt was in that cast.
The greatest.
I stand out. Again, given the time frame, like Richard Kind must have been in there as well, but it was really, really formative. And, did a school play around that time. And yeah, from then on, there was really nothing else I was going to do but be in performing and writing one way or another. And I think because it, a sketch show, arguably the best sketch company in America was my first exposure to it. It just seemed to naturally gravitate toward like, oh, what you do is you write stuff for yourself to be in. So then like we had a sketch group at my high school, as opposed to doing regular plays. Like we stopped doing The King and I and My Fair Lady, and we started doing Second City type stuff. Yeah, ever since then, that's been how it's been. And I've in my Chicago times before, after college and before I moved to Amsterdam to do sketch professionally, quote unquote, I was always vacillating between, like, literally, I'd either be in a play on the weekends that I was in or had directed or had a hand in writing, if not actually writing, or I was doing an improv show or a sketch show every weekend. And some of these paid as many as $5 a night.
My goodness.
Yeah, those were the days. But it was just, this is what it is. This is always what it's going to be. And there was never really any consideration of turning back to anything else.
And you mentioned, going pro in Amsterdam. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so there's this sketch and improv group in Amsterdam. It's called Boom Chicago. It's kind of like Second City, but with rock and roll tech. It's founded by some Chicagoans who were out there, and they realized that, Dutch people speak better English than we do, but they don't have improv. We should try it out. And they did, and they started in the back of a bar. And yeah, having never seen improv before, Dutch people's judgment of it was like, these people are wizards. These are absolute magicians. And so the show got very, very popular. And I had heard about it for a couple of years before I auditioned. And like one member of my comedy, or my improv troupe, had moved to Amsterdam and never to be seen again, actually. Like, he moved there forever, and he's still there. The great Robbie Andersplord. So I was like, all right, I'll go to the audition. I'll check it out. Now, the context, though, is that I was in the middle of getting divorced. Like, I'd gotten married straight out of college, and now 2.5 years later, had already been separated for a year, and living in a studio apartment, and just, not having anything close to anything that I'd been dreaming of, for the times that I'd dared to dream. I was like, fuck it, I'll go to this Amsterdam audition, but I'm not going to go. I'm not going to take the job. I'm just going because it's what an actor's supposed to do. But they really sold it really well. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I will go if I get it. And I got it at the same time as Ike Barinholtz. Actually, we joined at the same time along with our friends Joe Canale and Juliet Curry. Yeah, but then I was like, no, I'll go for a year. Now that I'm here, I'll stay for 1 year, but then I got to go back. Then I got shit to do. Well, that became 5 years. Now, I cannot look back truly and say that was like a great career move. It was to a degree, because you're performing constantly, you're writing constantly, and you're getting your chops up in a really really good way. There's something to be learned in trying to pierce through the noise of 300 drunk people who don't have English as a first language and still try to reach them with what you've written. 5 years is a little a little too long for someone who maybe wants to be writing television or movies down the road. But living in Europe, especially living in Holland, had an extremely positive effect on me, especially for the ball of emotional chaos that I was when I moved there. Yeah, like maybe if I'd left Amsterdam earlier, I'd have gotten some, real job sooner. I probably would have gone insane sooner too. Like, it's all kind of worked out for the best, but it is absolutely a life plan that no one should attempt to duplicate ever.
So after you spent 5 years in Amsterdam, what were the sort of next steps in your career? I mean, I did a little bit of research, and I know you've been, obviously you're in the comedy world, you're showing up in projects, you did some writing with Key and Peele and some performing. What was between Amsterdam and Ted Lasso? Give us a summary of what your journey was as a creative person.
So by that point, there were some cast members of Boom Chicago were on Mad TV. Ike was, and Josh Myers was, and Jordan Peele was, and I think Nicole Parker might have been by then as well. And so it was like, I got to go to LA. LA's a place to be. Easy peasy. And that proved to be a very dumb decision for a couple of reasons. One is, like, moving back to America after 5 years in Amsterdam was going to be its own thing, like getting used to another country again. But then on top of that, moving to Los Angeles, which is a very different place from Chicago, that was two life adjustments at the same time, and was a little too much. To describe the time between my first return from Amsterdam and coming back from and then finally getting Ted Lasso, it's a lot of used cars. Old used cars that barely passed their smog check.
They did pass.
They did pass. They did pass. But if you knew that guy in Los Feliz, yeah, he would take care of you.
Sure.
But still, beside all that, trying to stay busy. So my first main thing when I got back was I should say, because here's something that was valuable. Like, sometimes you can do a small thing, but if you recognize you have something in the small thing, then doing that small thing was worth it because it can become a bigger thing. So one example is, Ted Lasso was one example. It was a commercial, but then we realized we had something more, so we kept pursuing it. A friend of mine out here named Jill Benjamin, who had done Boom Chicago, she was running a monologue night called Wizard Finger. And I believe the term Wizard Finger came from, she dated some guy who had a weird penis that looked like a wizard's finger. That's neither here nor there. Anyway, she asked me to come in and do 10 minutes of something. Like, geez, what? I don't know, talk about Amsterdam. And I told, one story from Amsterdam about going to a sex club. And, there weren't that many people there, but you could tell in the room, like, objectively, like, oh shit, this is going somewhere. This is going somewhere, and it got people, and it had a proper punchline and stuck the landing, and I was able to walk off and be like, oh, okay, that's something. So that became a one-man show I did called 5 Years in Amsterdam, and I got to do that like all over the place, Chicago, New York, and Aspen and Edinburgh, and that was kind of my main thing for a while, and that got me some exposure to some industry types and what have you. I also saw. Mind you, none of that exposure got anywhere, but still exposure. I kept improvising. I was improvising at IO West out here and also UCB out here. Really loved performing at UCB, actually. Yeah, again, like just little projects. There's another like little place called Sacred Fools, a small theater off at Heliotrope and Melrose at the time, which is a nothing area. And they had a thing called Serial Killers. It was kind of like Channel 101. Which I've never been to, but I've heard about. But Serial Killers, 5 10-minute shows would go up. The audience would vote for 3 that would get to come back that following week for a next episode. The other 2 serials are killed. While on mushrooms at Burning Man, as you do, I'd had this idea about Pigpen from Peanuts. And this idea for a story where Pigpen is an adult and he's still dirty, but he's so dirty that he's actually homeless. And he's homeless and he's outside a church where they're having Charlie Brown's funeral and they won't let him in. Legal disclaimer. When I say Pigpen and Charlie Brown, I mean characters inspired by Pigpen and Charlie Brown.
We'll make sure to put that in the copy that accompanies this.
Thank you. Copyright Iconics Publishing Group. And the theatrical conceit of it was to be Pigpen's cloud of dirt and keep it kinetic. I had a hula hoop, and I just had this brown-black hula hoop. It's back there. And I would just hula hoop for the whole 10 minutes. And I was pretty sure I could pull that off. And again, it was one of those things like a small potatoes environment, but a room of very focused people. And again, just a 10-minute thing, but that 10 minutes felt like it was something. So I kept pursuing that. And then years later, that became a play called Absolutely Filthy. And then that got more kind of like exposure and around and getting noticed places. And again, I got to do it, something I got to go to New York to do. So just a lot of finding little things that keep me going. And then, getting commercials to pay the bills and every once in a while getting, a day on a TV show here and there, which happened to be like really good shows, which was nice. Like I had a fun little thing on it's called Community. And then I got on Key and Peele a bunch of times. And then my first proper writing job, finally, Key and Peele had me on their staff for their Super Bowl special one year. And, sorry for these rambling answers, but here we are.
No, this is exactly what I was hoping for.
Okay, great. The thing about the Key and Peele job that was great was I had really come to think of TV stuff and work in television and even just writers' rooms themselves, even though I'd been in many sketch writers' rooms, as something wholly apart from me. Like there was some special thing you were supposed to have or do to get into these rooms, some quality that I just had decided that I lacked. And well, I was psyching myself out is what I was doing. And I managed to psych myself out for many, many years, Like I was paralyzed by the idea of writing a spec script. Like, sure, I love the NBC office as much as anyone, but write a spec script about it? Oh, how? And it was just self-sabotage. There's absolutely no reason to not be doing it. And it just took a very, very long time to sort of get past that. But yeah, Jordan and Keegan bringing me in, and they'd known me for a long time. Again, I did Boom with Jordan back in the day. And that's when we both met Keegan. Then it was like, oh, this is just being with friends and doing your best and trusting that or deciding really that you belong, that you have something to contribute. Yeah, it's probably fair to say that I should have realized that a lot sooner, but I'm glad I realized it eventually.
At some point. What's your writing process like? Are you someone? I mean, obviously, when you're writing in a TV room, there's a certain structure to it that kind of dictates itself. But when you're alone and you have to put words on a page, what's your process? Do you set rigorous deadlines for yourself? Are you someone who just it's all up here and then in 2 days you write a whole script? How do you work?
I've discovered that I basically can do that, but I have to trick myself with those rigorous deadlines. So deadlines are a great tool, and the deadline can't be too soon because it's too soon that it doesn't mean anything. It has to really be a deadline to trick my mind for some reason. Like even on Ted Lasso, there's an example of that and this is largely Jason's mental trappings kind of evolving out to the whole thing. But it's true because it's true from his SNL days, but it's true of all sketch shows where you are improving the material up until the last possible second. You're changing the costume at the last second if it's going to make the sketch better. Yes, I know the sketch before us is on right now, but we can do it. Let's go. And that is not how your typical British television production works. And we throw them for a lot of loops over there, and we have an amazing crew who go with it. Excuse me. But yeah, anyway, Jason's mind will, as someone said, he will, like a sponge in a tank, he will grow to the exact size of his deadline. And that is when everything will be in. And I'm kind of that way too. Another tiny valuable tool is I'm holding up my phone, is voice memos. Anytime there's a fleeting idea, and for a Moleskine or whatever works just as well. But I find that this gets, slightly putting it in a phone gets it slightly more unfiltered out of my brain. I'm just wherever I am. If I'm on the train, so I've been like at a play, and if I'm sitting on the aisle and can do it discreetly, I walk out. I do the voice memo and I come back in, because it's the thing of like, you cannot judge your ideas when you have them. You cannot judge your draft while you are writing it. But so conversely, you have to honor those ideas. You have to assume that all these ideas are good ideas. So yeah, my voice memo file is several hundred ideas deep, some of which are garbage, but a few I'm very happy to have had, and even more so to have immortalized. Well, that sounds fancy.
There you go. Last question before we wrap up. And, you definitely answered part of this previously, but is there something you've learned over the course of your career that you wish you knew when you were first starting out? You mentioned the idea of just you were psyching yourself out, and you had to get to that point where you're still like, no, you can do this. But beyond that, is there anything else that you've learned that you wish you knew back in the day?
Yeah, I guess just to put a slightly finer point on it, because it's like, I don't want to misrepresent it. I actually did believe in my talent, technically speaking. Like I didn't think I wasn't good enough exactly, but I thought that the hurdles you had to jump through were unjumpable, basically. And what I wish I had learned earlier is that there is no hurdle that's unjumpable. You actually, if you do the part where you believe in yourself, which is theoretically the harder part, then believe not just that you can do the big picture thing, which I was retained a fleeting confidence in, but that you can do these hurdles, like if every schmuck in town has a screenplay, then you can at least be one of the schmucks. So whatever the hurdle is, just face it, conquer it, get it over with. That's really, I guess, the advice I would have given myself. Find out what's the thing you have to do and just fucking get it over with. It's the same as with writing drafts, like can't edit your draft, can't go back and fix that thing that you thought of. Nope. Plow through. Get it over with, finish the draft, get it over with, go through the hurdle, because sticking around or thinking you can't do it will only prove your point.
I think that's a great point to stop. Brendan, thank you so much for taking the time to chat today. Congrats on the show.
Thank you very much on both counts, Phil. Appreciate it.
Thanks to Brendan Hunt for coming on the show. Season 2 of Ted Lasso is streaming right now on Apple TV+. And as always, thanks to you, our listeners. If you liked this episode, leave us a review. And if you haven't already, subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. For news about future episodes and more, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter @Final Draft Inc. and Instagram @Final Draft Screenwriting. This episode was produced by Kayla Guess with help from associate producer Emma Vranich. Music by T. Kelly. Thanks again, everyone. Until next time, write on.